It's the meeting of the Acushnet Finance Committee, Wednesday, October 10th, 2018. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. The first order of business we have this evening is a request for reserve fund transfer from the golf department.
They have chosen not to ask for the transfer at this time because they haven't expended all their lines. In the old days, you had to, individual lines would. They've exhausted their repair and maintenance line, but they haven't exhausted their expense lines. So until they need a transfer, I've suggested them not to bother. That would not be from the general reserve fund; it would be from their reserve fund.
Right.
But it does still take a vote of this board and the Board of Selectmen. So, this moment, we'll put that in abeyance. Yeah.
Old business. Old business. All right. New business.
Before you is a current to actual report here, being that the fiscal year started in July. It's not exactly compelling reading, but at the moment we just make sure that you know where we're at. I want to make sure that you guys, no surprises. There are no surprises in here. You're going to get one big fat file.
Is it right there? Thank you.
Yeah, that's mine.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I
didn't
have one. Thank you.
So, I assume that you want to keep this bedside and refer to it frequently.
Of course.
So, no surprises, nothing really earth-shattering in there. So,
Brian, what's the possibility of this being exported and being sent to us via email?
absolutely, 100%.
Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, personally, for me to go through this, printed like this,
Actually,
I'd much rather get it in a
this
file.
is the summary, Michael. Can
and
you
I
imagine
love
what the
it.
actual full budget looks like?
I can't wait.
So I would much prefer not to print it. It would save a lot of time.
It'd save a lot of trees,
Yeah,
paper.
absolutely. Happy to do that.
Not for everyone.
I need one.
Well, I would tell you this, as we come closer to the middle of the budget, or middle to three-quarters of the budget, as we get closer to town meeting, and you want to look at what a department is doing, having the printed version, at least one or two on the table, so you could look, I think we'll do that. But I don't have any problem with emailing them to you, I frankly prefer to.
Can we all get iPads and we'll just have the iPads?
I think you could, as a matter of fact. I'd love to move every board to iPads, or Google Chromebooks, which are cheaper.
I actually wonder if, the paper and the printing costs in the long run would
Offset
Equal
it
out,
I mean, it might take a little while, but
probably last a long time.
yeah.
So, I know, like, Roger Cabral he doesn't want any paper. He gets everything by email, and he keeps it on his laptop, and he has no trouble with it. So, I think that time is coming.
It's 2018.
I like this, maybe I'm over,
Well, but I'll
stuck
make
in
sure that
time.
there are a
It allows
few
me
of
to
them,
digest and analyze it.
but maybe we'll lay out 2 or 3 on the table, and that would be it. You can
Right,
pass it
okay.
around.
I appreciate that.
Make sure you have one, because you're responsible, so. Okay, next one. The school parking lot. We had an article in May of 17, I think Article 18, that we built the school parking lot. We used a little more money to pave it than we had anticipated, and we bought the lighting, but we decided that we would probably stall installing it, and that was great, but nobody told the electrician. So he came and installed them. So we've taken the money right at the moment out of Dan's operating funds. So we'll wait and see how we come out at the year end. But I just want to let you know what we did, and if this comes back, this is what happened. So in the long run, it's a great mistake, because by the time we made the decision to stall putting the lighting in, it was nice and bright, and now it's dark, and I'm go over to the schools, and thank goodness we did. So it was a fortunate mistake.
Right.
So, all right. Next, we talked about OPEB. There's a memo similar to one I gave you last year, but it talks about where we are on funding our OPEB. The town meeting, we had originally discussed the idea of using the meals tax for funding source for the OPEB. It was soundly defeated at town meeting. But the Department of Revenue has come back and said you should do it again. That's a philosophical discussion that you as a board can have and the selectmen can have. I think you don't keep going back successively and, I think you wait a few years and, give it a chance, but just because you don't get the vote you want, you don't keep putting it back up. But that's a philosophical debate that you guys should have about whether you want to or not. The problem I see with it is, do you want to pay your own taxes or do you want everybody from out of town to pay your taxes? That's the argument. Do taxes go up? Taxes always go up. Does this meals tax go up? Probably not, because the price of the meal is going up, so the revenue goes up. It is another tax, however. I think, Michael, you had made that point.
I stick by that point.
Yeah, the taxes are,
Yep.
once introduced, never go away.
Absolutely.
The temporary sales tax being a classic example of that. Because I'm old enough to remember
Tax.
1966 and you're not.
But
So-
I think I probably agree with some of what you're saying, in the sense that we have to continue to look at revenues that are non-property tax. Okay, I mean, property tax at Acushnet, is high, probably not as high as people imagine it is, but it is high. And so if we should always look at revenues that are non-property tax. And so we don't keep going to the well on the property tax owner. Because when you're taxing people where they live, and so forth, it's really a negative tax. So I think sometimes it's good to continue this discussion. We've sometimes, we represent the property tax owner in town, as far as, and that's that's their basic tax, and that's the biggest cost they have. And I'm just going to give you an example of how we fall into a trap. When we had the revised bottle bill that came on the ballot a couple of years ago, and everyone, and then the lobbyists started saying to the public, well, that's just another form of a tax, increasing the amount of redeemables, and also the amount of expanded, say, the redeemables as well. So it was. People fell into the trap, property owners fell into the trap, oh yeah, we don't need any more taxes. That bill is is a form of a tax. They fell into the trap of what lobbyists were expounding. Come to find out, now we're spending a whole amount of money for, for recyclables. It's a budget buster. Had we had that in place, and had that, referendum passed, the bite on the property owner wouldn't have been as much. And now we're spending, and probably we'll see an increase in our budget to deal with our recyclables and our trash. But again, let's sometimes, stop looking at, any tax is a bad tax. Because we basically, the property owners in Acushnet are basically, are saying, when is this going to stop? When are you going to start looking at other revenues so we can get some type of relief? So I think, so that, I'll get off my soapbox, but I basically, and I'm sure there's going to be other issues that come up in the future dealing with this issue, so we should continue to talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leniency.
Indulgences.
Indulgence.
So, I find it interesting that the DOR was surprised, because apparently we're the only community last year that rejected the meals tax. So, interesting. So they, in our letter from DOR, when they send us the free cash number, will be a comment about things that we should be doing, and that's gonna be in there, so. My feeling is that you come and sell it to the people.
As a recommendation from the DOR.
Yeah, put it back put it back, and it's like, I don't know if you keep going back, saying, even though, I would have preferred doing it that way, the argument was settled. How many times do you go back? You know, if you don't get ice cream from your mother the first time and you ask again, do you get it then? So, all right, so the OPEB document, we're in better shape than we were because we did move, or we are in the process still of moving the money from Bartholomew to the state's fund and then adding the 100,000. So that should change our position. It means also we have 300 grand plus 311,000, I think, right now in the OPEB trust. So if we were to put another 100 grand in, if we can do that this year, that brings it up to the 4. I mean, you start chipping away at it slowly. It's a moving target, because one of the things that you do, if you buy a house, you know that the mortgage is, let's say, 200,000 or 300,000, and you keep paying it down, and hopefully someday you pay off the house. The actuarial report on the liability changes based upon the number of employees you have, how much they get paid, how long they think they're gonna live, what age they are, what their profession is. So that number keeps moving. So it's a moving target, you never know. So that every time you do the thing, I guess the best way you describe it is we just keep working our way at it a little at a time.
Brian, how much are we underfunded right now?
11 million,
How do we fare as far as other communities?
right in the middle. Yeah, only one.
Within Massachusetts?
Within
you're
Massachusetts,
saying?
only one community, West Woodbury,
Oh.
has paid off their liability, and they did it with an override. There's no logic to that, but okay. Everybody else is doing what we're doing, just chipping away at it. Most of the communities that could do it, like Plymouth, for example, put in the meals, restaurant tax and the occupancy tax for the hotels. That's going into their OPEB. They'll probably be among the first communities to pay off their liability, because they have a dedicated revenue stream, and the economy's good, and tourism is good, and meals tax is good. They're paying it off faster. So we are not in the position where I have a occupancy tax or a hotel tax, and all we have is restaurants. We tax the restaurants. The projection from the DOR was about 70 grand.
Is what we would get?
Well, we would get an additional tax revenue. But, you know, if you think about it, we're putting 100 grand against it now. So if you took the 70 and the 100, now you're putting 170, wouldn't it be too hard to sell to get it to 200,000? So you double your pace. You know, get it down faster, sooner. See, one of the advantages of a double whammy, if you were to pay off the liability, you get back the money you were contributing on an annual basis, plus you can pay off your OPEB from that fund. Because now you're fully funded your OPEB, you take that money and you pay the liability that way. So it's a double plus for you. You're not paying as you go, and you're not saving for your liability.
Right. It's just right now, there's really not many options that we have.
No, not unless you really think that it would be wise to lay people off and pay the liability, or raise taxes dramatically. And what does the taxpayer get for that? So,
Doesn't see anything.
yeah, you know, I think the direct answer to the question is prudently and pragmatically, you chip away at it. And there's some strategies that we can adopt as we catch up our liability to Bristol County, and that money becomes available. We can shift it to the OPEB liability, but that is not a solution. That's not a solution that happens in the next 3 to 5 years. That's a solution that happens over the next 20.
Yeah, it would take years to, if we had the meals tax, to pay off. Like you said, it's a moving target.
Correct. But I mean, if you were gonna do this on a real serious basis and say, okay, we're gonna pay the right amount of money every year, and we're gonna defeat this, 900,000
A year
a year.
is what, yeah, that's unrealistic.
No, it is unrealistic. But again, chip away at it. You adopt the pay-as-you-go out of the current budget, and you pay down the liability little at a time.
You know, sometimes we should look at, the future as far as, coming back to that meals tax issue, and apply it basically to the growing cost of recycling. To offset some of those costs rather than have it fall onto the property of tax base.
Well,
That's a suggestion.
we're gonna be visiting the recycling issue because our recycling costs went from, in the space of 5 years, $33 a ton to $150 a
Right.
ton. And one of the concerns we have, and you've probably been aware that we've been touting, what can you put in the recycle bin? Don't put dirty
I know,
pizza
they-
boxes in, make sure you rinse your milk carton. Don't put your recyclables in a bag that isn't in and of itself recyclable, because when the trash goes in and we get an F, because it's a contaminated load, we pay a lot. If you get too many contaminated loads, take your stuff somewhere else.
Correct.
How have
So-
we been with that?
We went from an F to a C,
That's-
you
that's
know,
good.
we need to be a B. So, but we're moving in the right direction, but we may have to do what New Bedford's done and send out the trash police and have them look in your recycle bin. And I really don't want to do that, but,
That's a cost factor with manpower, so
well, there's a cost factor to that, but the biggest cost factor is getting your loads rejected, paying more for a contaminated load than you should have to pay, or worse, go away. And then where do I go? So we definitely have to pay attention to that. There's been money spent on a flyer that we distributed with the barrels to everybody. We put more information up on the website. There's a new Recyclepedia on the website, so if you're not sure that this is recyclable or not, you can look it up online and you can see whether it is or is not recyclable. And then, well, we did the reverse 911, and that brought people's attention to the issue. And that's when the load started to get a little cleaner. So then single stream was great, and then we got lazy and people started putting just everything into the recyclable, or even, well, that ought to be recyclable, so I'll put that in there too. And it isn't. And I'm just as guilty. I mean, the pizza box had some cheese stuck to the top. It's recyclable. It's not.
what do you do with it?
You put it in the regular trash. But see, here's the problem. It's a double-edged sword. Put too much recyclables in the regular trash, you get in trouble. You put contaminated stuff in the recyclable, you get into trouble. So we gotta get better discipline, all of us, and I'm probably as guilty as the rest, being a little bit more careful with our recyclables, making sure that they get rinsed out. I'm a maniac now at home, making sure the milk carton's clean and take the cap off because it's a different plastic than the other one. And so, my wife thinks I'm completely OCD.
It's gonna lead to just illegal dumping eventually, that's what you're
Well,
gonna have.
see, here's the other problem. You gotta think this one out. The solution would be pay as you throw. John's gonna tell you though that right now, your trash is picked up as part of your taxes. Taxes are deductible. If I do pay as you throw, you've now received a service for that money, it's not tax deductible. So, and I can assure you, your taxes won't go down.
No.
So, I'd like to keep, as long as we can, the pickup of trash and recyclables under the levy and not outside the levy. It's better for the community, meaning the taxpayer, and it's a service I think we can bring to our taxpayers and frankly ought to. Or you could do what Plymouth did. You're on your own. The town's out of the business. Here's a bunch of vendors you can call, and there is a transfer station. It's open limited hours. Make sure you bring your stuff and spend plenty of time sorting it. Plymouth walked away from curbside recycling, and they literally said, Bob, here's a list of 5 guys that can come pick up your trash, pick one, and you pay. I'm not sure we're ready for that. Is not the obligation of government to get rid of the trash? So,
Brian, are you aware of any study that's been done that looks at the percentage of recycling and what the percentage is of redeemables or items that could be brought under the bottle bill, 5 cents? Because I know personally, I haven't brought anything back in ever. I put it in the recycling.
right.
And I would imagine I am not exclusive in that.
No, you're
There are
not.
tons
The
of
recycling
people
center
that-
does pick out those and they get the money from Coca-Cola or
Yep.
whomever, because they're the ultimate source of where the recyclable goes anyway. So when they're sorting the trash, they pick up that revenue and supposedly net it against our bill overall.
Okay.
But it wouldn't pay, for example, for us to pre-sort the trash looking for just the nickel cans.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is
Yeah.
there a way that we could segregate it and
Not
then
yet.
have it picked up
For the
separately?
recycling places now, you're supposed to get 5 cents on a can, they give you 3 cents.
Right.
How's that work?
Well, the problem is
Ask the
this,
guy really
glass
what-
is no longer, glass was the biggest thing we always wanted to recycle. And remember originally when you went to the recycling center, you put the green glass and the brown glass and the white glass, and that was a real saleable commodity. Not anymore, there's no market for glass, none, zero. So you're paying to get rid of it, you're not getting any money for it. Paper used to be a profitable item, now you're lucky if you break even. Plastic, if it's purely separated, so the number of the recycle, on the bottom, and you can have a whole load of that, you can get some money. But the chances are having that properly segregated are slim to none. Metal, hard to actually get it recycled at this point. Remember, at one point, metal was a real market. People were going around picking up metal from everywhere, and they were getting real money for it. Not anymore. In fact, an awful lot of our people around here wait for the price of metal to come back. It's not coming back. So, the only thing I could tell you is that we probably were foolish, because 20, 30 years ago, Massachusetts didn't export any of its recyclables. We handled it all in-state. When we ran into the problem with China, we recycle less than 10% in-state. And right now, a lot of our recyclables are going to Ohio, West Virginia. We now have a new market in Vietnam. Vietnam is stepping up to fill the gap that China left. If you saw the newspaper about 3 days ago, Vietnam signed a whole deal with Bermuda for all of their stuff. So from a social welfare compact kind of thing, maybe we shouldn't be sending our trash to China. Maybe we should figure out what to do with it here. So, but I think that's going to be it's not our province yet, and I don't think that our recycling problems are over.
There was a movement, I was reading today, in fact, a movement to go back to glass, like instead of bottled, water be glass.
Meaning the milk, milk came in a thing and
Because they
went
have
back
so
and
many
got
problems
washed
with
and then
plastic
recycled.
in the
Yeah.
environment, and
Yep.
so we may see that in a few years, and I don't know how we will handle it. If we're getting a dime, like I think that referendum was, it would be profitable in one sense, it wouldn't fall on.
I don't know where the straw thing came from. You're all familiar with straws,
Yeah.
but, and I don't know if I believe the numbers that they spout for that, but I've stopped taking a straw. So, and I, like you, whatever I want, and cans went into the recycle, and I didn't take them back to the grocery store either, because they were sticky and, it was a pain in the neck. So, and when you put all those cans in, you walked out with $3.50, it was like, However, be that as it may, I think we're all gonna have to change our nasty little habits, so. All right, and you are gonna hear from Dan when he comes in to do his presentation of the dire situation in recyclables, and it's gonna cost us more, and we're gonna put more money into recycling this year than ever before. So, you'll hear that later. Okay, anything further on OPEB? Mike brought this in, by the way, which is, I read it briefly, I went right to the summation. I think that the grand solution will be probably that government can't offer these great big pensions that they've been doing, but it will be an interesting challenge to get rid of that. I think returning, as Michael and I talked about earlier in the meeting, returning to basically the private sector model might be the way to go.
That's what most of the private sector has done.
And we're not gonna end up with, defined benefit plans are gone.
Yeah.
And we have a defined benefit plan. But that's gonna require state law change and some contracts with unions change, and big stuff, but won't necessarily be Acushnet's option until it changes state law.
There's a lot of factors in that, because a lot of those pension funds are highly invested into the
State of
stock
Massachusetts.
markets, and
Yep.
you're gonna take a
Yep.
big hit if you start pulling those funds out.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from this perspective. I work 10 years, and I'm walking out with a pension of 22-24%, plus health insurance, or half of my health insurance till I go to Medicare. Now, you're gonna be lucky with me, because I won't retire until I'm 70, so A, I won't live too long after that, and B, I'll be on Medicare the minute I walk out the door, so you're gonna be in great shape with me.
You're a bargain, right?
I'm a bargain. You should hire the older worker. All right, so I'll give you some other good news. Free cash was certified today. So the big number is $1,191,000. We had suggested, when we did the budgeting, we were aiming for $1 million. So coming in at 1.1 is pretty good. It's almost 1.2, so to be fair. So that was certified today, and I gotta tell you, Julie worked the buns off on this one, so this was a tough year for that. Julie, yeah, she's doing great. All right, I wanna go spend a little moment on the budget letter and make sure that this is where you guys wanna go this year. I am recommending, because you always have the choice of level funding or level services. I don't like necessarily locking it down to either one of those. I would like a thoughtful explanation of your budget and where you want to go, almost a narrative. If you can do level funding, great, but I would then question whether you're doing level services, or whether your services are increasing or decreasing, or whether you even know what you're doing in your department if you can't tell us where your budget is going. I never liked zero-based budgeting, because it encouraged people to spend all their money in their budget, so they got another budget next year. So you don't want to punish necessarily the guy that does a good job with his spending by removing funding, or you'll get a liar. So I'm calling for a thoughtful budget. I got to come up with a much catchier name, but the idea is that we'll be distributing these. This letter won't go out until mid-November, so it doesn't have to be decided today by this committee. I'm also looking, I hate it when a committee comes in and says 2% increase across the board. I'd like to have some thought into this, why you need a 2% or why you don't. So don't just give me a percentage flat increase, tell me what you really need to do. I am encouraging the emergency management planning to put a little more money into our budget. I think we're seeing the reasons why today, when Hurricane Michael hits Florida. We're not prepared for anything like that. Next Monday, we're bringing in the Maritime Academy to start looking at some of our emergency planning and start working with us on how we handle emergency planning. But for example, if we were on the panhandle of Florida today, we're not prepared for that. We would be in deep
I don't
trouble.
think anyone's prepared for that.
I think you're right, but I
I know what you're saying.
we're gonna move as fast as we can to get the senior center up and ready to be qualified. I'd like to do it before winter. It's crazy to open a school if I only have to relocate 14, 15 people. But I need to,
What needs to be done?
you have to have a full building generator, which we're working on. We got that grant last year. It has to have a shower, okay, which we are putting in for several reasons. One of which is to make it a shelter, and two, to give better service to our seniors. And we have to bring the kitchen up, upgrade it a little bit. And we'll have to actually get our kitchen staff, or a volunteer kitchen staff, Serve Safe certified, so that they can serve in an emergency. And then we'll have to put some storage of MREs, if you will, lay in a supply in the event that, it's very bad. And we have to work on our infrastructural changes. For example, none of our utilities are buried, and we're fed from two sides of the town on two power supplies coming in that don't merge. So if the Rochester side drops or the New Bedford side drops, there's no way to patch over the grid and get power from the other one. We need to talk to Eversource about that. You'll be pleased to know that Eversource is upgrading the power lines into the town to create more and on different circuits. So that should help us. So instead of losing in the entire one half of the town we might lose only a quarter or an eighth. So that should help. But we're also need to be thinking about our gas infrastructure. I think that was clear this last couple of months. We have an awful lot of gas, and it's been in there for over 100 years. We did do, if you probably were watching our website, we did do the gas inspection twice in the last 6 months. And fortunately, everything's fine. But the problem I have is that's an old infrastructure. What are we doing about that? So,
The, with FEMA and the, some of the emergency services, when we have a, say a hurricane and they have a surge and so forth, I don't know how, if we had 12 feet, we have all the maps showing what areas would be affected. But I presume that it's not going to be, would be massive in Acushnet.
it'll be localized.
Be localized.
But I gotta tell you, if it was your house, it's massive.
Oh, I know that, but what I'm saying is, take a community like Fairhaven, where it would be very massive, in a 38 hurricane, it was very massive, because it had a big storm surge and so forth. Where would those people go if they emergency evacuate them? Where do they go? And is Acushnet prepared, since we're higher ground and so forth, is we're going to have to set up living quarters, tents, emergency shelter, as those people have to...
Our schools, our two schools are
Would they be able to cover that amount of,
right now, the
capacity?
plans that we have,
So
we
we
would
have to
fill,
be...
but then they would go further north.
So some planning would have, in my estimation, would have to be probably regionalized, as far as not
Well,
just...
local being a region, we work very closely with, and we get a lot of attention from them because our planning is actually further along than other communities. We are actually, I
Oh,
look at
yeah.
it and say we need to do more, and we're getting awards because of how much we've done. Okay, I'm happy, but we still need to do more. We're not anywhere near. If you had a 38 hurricane like that through here, or the one that came through in 58, or the one that came through in 62, we're not prepared. And look how, none of you are old enough to, well, maybe Bob might be old enough to remember the early 60 storms. And it took this town a long time to
Remember the
recover.
55 one.
54 too.
54, yeah, 54.
And
I remember
it
watching
took-
houses down there, Sycamore and Fairhaven, Sycamore Street, just being washed away.
Right. Fortunately, it's one of the good reasons we don't have a harbor. So,
Well, we have the dike, so
yep. So, we're working on that. So we're gonna see some increased funding from EMA. We'll see the recycle issue. I think our capital budget, I'm reasonably optimistic that we will have a much softer year than we had last year. So,
School roofing.
I'm asking the schools to step up their process. They haven't really done anything. And that's where we are somewhat vulnerable. One of those school roofs is the original. It was never touched when we redid the schools. And yeah, we gave them 50,000 last year for roof repairs, but the idea was to stall it until they could get their roof plan done. There's no roof plan yet. So, I need to get the proposal ready. It needs to be, go to SBA for how much they're gonna fund it. So I don't believe that we'll have a request from the schools this year. I think we're probably gonna wait another year, and I'm just nervous as hell about that. I think that we need to be doing a process. Or if we wait long enough, we have to do both roofs at the same time and all of them. So, make it count. So, yeah, I'm concerned about that.
How about on the personnel?
Doing well. The wage and classification study is complete, 90% complete. The wage section, classifications are done, job descriptions are done, some tweaking on the job descriptions still going on. Working with the golf committee to tidy up that which remains for golf. Very difficult, very different doing golf than it is doing town side. The state gave guidance over the weekend about what we're supposed to do about the $12 minimum wage coming in January. was pretty simple. Wish I'd thought of it, so I'll show the golf committee, but they just killed out the first few steps of the lowest wage. Works great. And then we're waiting for the employee handbook, meaning explaining the policies of employment and benefits. And I have taken the board, the selectmen, increments of the wage scale plan where we have categories where we're way off, sort of close, just fine, but interestingly enough, no one's overpaid. No one's outside the wage and class on the other end. So there's some that you need to make an adjustment today. There's some that you're gonna need to pay attention to and move up a little faster than a COLA would normally allow. And there's some others that would take, 3 years to correct, because they're not that far off, which is, much more programmed way of doing it than just simply dumping a whole ton of money.
We're not gonna see an impact.
I think you're gonna see more of an impact on the wages this year because of the 5 union contracts that are settling. The only one that we haven't settled yet is the police, but we've settled DPW, we've settled AFSCME, which is the town hall clerical. We've merged the library to the town hall clerical. Dispatches is part of town hall clerical. And now we're under the police budget, and there's 2 school contracts to come this year.
How long are those contracts?
3 years.
3 years? They're all
3
3 years?
Yeah, the only one that the town signed, which was 1 year, was fire and EMS, the two contracts, one for fire, one for EMS, because we're in the process of trying to put the 2 departments together as one, and therefore be one collective bargaining agreement, so it's only a 1-year deal. They got 2%.
Anything that's gonna have to be retroactive?
All of the contracts we settled were retroactive to July 1st.
When that wage and classification study is complete, will it be a public document then?
It's a publicly available document.
When it's completed, or is it now?
It is now.
Okay.
Happy to share it to you. It's about that thick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna publish it,
Run it off, I
run
know.
it off, and it's actually sort of segmented to not be really PDF-able, but you come and pick up the notebook and have a good time.
Thank you very much.
All the job descriptions are actually
Well,
going
I'd
to
like
be
to refer to
posted.
those parts, to that, if we starting making some adjustments, so.
Correct.
I would like to,
Yep.
so we.
I'd like to get down into it. This is all non-union, not union.
I
So
know.
the wage classification, the other part of the other shoe has to drop this year for the union wage classification, or mostly classification. Wages set by the contract, classification is what we have to work on, and job descriptions. But all of the job descriptions I'm gonna make, when they're finalized, are all gonna be PDF'd and all gonna be on the website. So you wanna look up a job description, you can do that. The wage classification, what you do is you take the job description, and then you sit down with a document. Bob's been through this. You sit down with a document, and it goes through a rating process. You rate the job, it tells you the grade, you go to the wage classification, you look up the grade, there's the pay. It's pretty clever. So
And
it's,
that's all developed specific to a region, to the state?
this town,
Just to this town?
right. The format is the state format.
Okay.
So if you decide to move to East Overshoe and you get involved in the wage and classification plan there, while the answer on the wage might be different, the way you get there is exactly the same.
Right.
And the goal for this is 2 things: the Pay Equity Act, which passed last year. So you had to prove that you have parity and equity in your system, that I just didn't give you more because I liked you better, or you're a guy and I gave Kathy less because she's a girl, or vice versa, because it works both ways. You have to you establish the parity of the job by the classification of the job description. And I was somewhat skeptical going into it, and I've come out as a fan. It works. So
And who develops this whole program?
the company that we hired to do it was called Human Resources Services, and she did a great job. We have a woman, Sandra Stapsinski, and she's done a great job. So,
It's
and
been a
then,
couple of years, the process.
yes, well, she started right after the May 17 town meeting, and she's still working on it. I mean, we still have some pieces missing.
Same lady.
Same lady. Fairhaven hired her, Somerset hired her. So she's got a lot of business down here. By the way, this is the business to be in right now. So, because not only did the government have to do it, but a lot of private corporations have to do it because of the Pay Parity Act, the Pay Equity Act. So, good business. And then we're gonna do one for the union positions, because we have, our job descriptions are terrible. So they have to all be cleaned up and then rateable.
The same lady gonna do,
Same lady, yep. So we'll keep doing, I want the thing to line up. It's sort of a, just because it's union or non-union, it's still a town of Acushnet, and I need it to line up. So, good. I have, other than that, I have just tidbits for you. Our health insurance is pretty good. We're working with the IAC very aggressively to redesign plans so that in the event that our luck runs out and our costs start to go the other way, we'll be in better shape. And have some more flexibility in what we do. The IEC is made up of members of each union and each part of the town government, so we have union, non-union, teachers, DPW, police officers, firefighters, you know, so it's pretty diverse. And I'm rather amused, in some cases I proposed someone that was somewhat more private sector approach to doing things on the insurance. And all but the teachers were thrilled to just go in blindly, let's do it, let's try it. If we fail, we fail, but let's try it. And the teacher's like, wait a minute. So and the teachers being our largest group of employees, we do have to pay attention. So, but it's fun. I mean, even the employees get it, because they're picking up 40% of the cost themselves. So they are aware that what can we do to control this. So we have partners in this one. And you're gonna have to be nice to me while Julie's out on vacation, or not vacation, maternity leave. She leaves next Friday for 6 weeks. So,
who's gonna fill the gap in the, for the budget season?
well, fortunately, she'll be back just before we get, we send the letter out. So we'll have to actually put the budget sheets together, which Mel can do. So I'm not too concerned about that. So we won't be getting budgets back until she's back. And then she's gonna have to catch up fast. So, she is an integral part of that budget process, so. Let's hope she gets bored with being home. So, all good.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Noble while he's here?
Comments on the budget letter, you can either call me or email me if you got specific things. It is a budget letter that is a joint letter from us, the Finance Committee and administration. So consequently, if you don't like what I'm proposing, you need to tell me.
Fair enough. Next meeting, November 14th, does that work for you?
Works for me. That's when that day would be the day I want to release the letter.
Right.
I can wait till, of course, the 15th, one day isn't gonna kill me. So if you wanna bring this back up for any changes, that's fine, otherwise, we'll be ready to go.
And we have some meeting minutes to approve. March 21st, 2018. Absent was Sue Delgado, Mike St. Ange, and Jackie Stanley. Motion approved.
I'll motion to accept. Second.
Motion made and seconded for the March 21st meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. And on the March 28th, absent was Mr. McGlynn. Motion?
Motion.
and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Voted? Being no further business before the committee at this time, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?